Hello, people of the internet. My name is Mikey Nation. It's been a while since I've seen you guys. The last time I saw you guys was when I did an idiots kind of thing, and back when I was in my Star Wars YouTube channel phase. First, I didn't like it too much. I thought it was alright, the Star Wars phase kind of thing. It's kind of cool, but also kind of annoying. I wasn't in the best mental state when doing that. But let's get that out of the way. You guys came here for Last of Us episodes 1 and 2 review. Also, I finally got my room back, but I don't have a laptop. It broke, so I'm currently using my phone. But let's get right into this. So, for those of you that don't know what The Last of Us is, The Last of Us is an action-adventure TV show based on the video game that came out in 2013 called The Last of Us. The Last of Us Part 2, which is a sequel to the first game, came out in 2020. And The Last of Us HBO Max TV show Season 2 is based on the second game. The first season is based on the first game. It's about these two characters, Joel and Ellie, having to survive in a modern zombie apocalypse. I'm not going to spoil anything. If you want to learn more about the game or the TV show, go watch the TV show or play the game. It tells the story either way. This game came before the TV show, and there are some things the TV show gets inaccurate, but most things it does get accurate from what I've read and from it played, in my opinion. I haven't played very much of The Last of Us. I was at a friend's house last week, and I played The Last of Us there because I heard of the reviews. I heard of the previews for The Last of Us TV show, and I wanted to play the game to see what it was like. I kind of liked it. It was alright. It was cool. There are some things the show does get accurate. So, let's review episode 1 first. Okay, The Last of Us episode 1. The runtime was about 80 minutes. It was like an hour and 20 minutes. I saw that one like a couple days ago when I just got back home from my friend's place. And I thought it was pretty good. I'll get my negatives out of the way so I can actually talk about the positives. So, my negatives of episode 1. I didn't have very many negatives. Trying to remember. There's one negative I didn't like at all, but it didn't bother me way too much. In the video game, the prologue of the video game takes place in 2013, and the main events of the video game take place in 2033. They're 20 years apart. In the show, it's the same length, 20 years apart, but they change it by 10. Now the prologue takes place in 2003, and the main events take place in 2023, aka our current year. When I saw that, I was just like, why change the years? It doesn't affect the story at all. Why not keep the prologue in 2013 and the main events in 2033? Excuse me. Yeah. Personally, I didn't like that. I don't know. It just kind of bothered me. Not too much, but I'm just like, yeah, it's just like, it's completely unnecessary. It doesn't change anything, so why not just keep it the same? It's more accurate. The only thing it affects is the accuracy of the game's story. It's just unnecessary to change. Change whatever story thing you want. I don't care personally, but just keep the years. So, yeah. I'm trying to think of more negatives. There's this one character named Ellie. Obviously the character from the game. She's played by Bella Ramsey. She appeared one time in the Game of Thrones. Joel, the main character of the show, is played by Pedro Pascal. He will also appear in Game of Thrones, Game of Thrones, and he also appeared in The Mandalorian as the lead character, the Mandalorian. I'd say my one negative of Ellie it's that she cusses way too much. And I'm not sure if this spoils anything, but there's this one scene in episode 1 where she has like she's in like chained up to this like wall with these like psychiatrists torturers or whatever come up to her, and there's like count 1 to 10, and then she's like 1 2 3 4 5 6, and they're just like slowly, and then she says 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 F you. She actually does say fuck you. She's pretty aggressive in this show in terms of verbal aggression. The first time was actually kind of funny. I actually laughed. But the second time, she's just like, let me out of here. I'm not supposed to be here, motherfuckers. I'm just like, I guess that's fine. But don't keep doing it. I had a feeling she was going to keep doing it. And what did I know? She kept doing it. And I just like, it gets annoying and repetitive. Like, just a quick little thing from episode 2. There's a scene where Ellie and Joel and another character are walking through this like building, and in this building she sees like a dead body taken over by zombies or with like zombie bites. She says, "What the fuck could have done this? You've already cussed too many times before then. That should be your last time. Even then, all the times before was way too much. So you're basically just beating a dead horse." That's how I viewed it. It was annoying. They ruined a potentially interesting line with just, what the fuck have they done this? And not even that great of a tone. It was kind of like, it's not bad, but like, I don't know. The acting isn't on point here. I would have been fine with, what could have done this? Something like that. But no, what the fuck could have done this? Something like that. Like, it feels kind of forced. It feels completely unnecessary. I don't like it. It's annoying. And she does this throughout both episodes. I like her character. She seems kind of alright, but characters aren't really the best thing in the show. I'd say the story is the best thing in the show so far. Like, I'm actually really enjoying the story and how they're unfolding it. But everything else is like, kind of like, some things are nearly as good, but everything else is inferior to the story, even the characters and the acting. But even then, the acting is probably the second best part, but also one of the worst parts at the same time. Because some moments, the acting is just not on par. It's not good, but it's not bad either. But in some moments, the acting is just actually pretty great. I'll say so far, my favorite actor in this show is Pedro Pascal as Joel. He is actually really cool. In the first episode, he acts like a badass. He is an absolute badass in the first episode. In episode 2, he's just like, he's not really that much of a badass. He's more sarcastic. He's like that hardened. He's like the typical. He portrays Joe like he is a hardened. He's one of those like hardened badass or sarcastic badass kind of type characters. Which I think that's kind of who he is in the game, sort of, just minus the sarcasm, at least from what I've played. But he is like that hardened, badass kind of character. And I think Joel does a pretty decent I think Pedro does a pretty decent Joel. I mean, I don't really like either Joels, but I like Pedro Pascal's Joel more only because I like Pedro Pascal's like actor. I don't really like the characters too much in The Last of Us, either show or video game either. Or anyway. Like, The Last of Us isn't really something I'm not interested in. But because it's a show, and because I prefer movies in some scenarios more than games, in this scenario, I prefer the show or the game. Sort of. I prefer the gameplay over than watching the show of The Last of Us, kind of. But because it's a show, and I'm actually really hooked, I prefer the show in this case scenario. Like, one bad example of acting in episode 1 was in the prologue of the show. There's a certain death scene between Joel and another character. The people who have already seen the show and the people who have played the game will instantly know what I'm talking about. But for those who don't know, I'm going to keep it concealed. There's one other character who got shot, is dying right in front of Joel. And this character, the way she dies, I mean, personally, in the video game, that scene kind of like got me kind of emotional. It almost got me crying. In this show, it almost got me crying too, a little bit more. Not because of the acting. In the game, the acting is absolutely great. But in the show, the acting isn't really nearly that convincing. It wasn't the acting that really got me like, or the scene that got me like emotional. It was the fact that the story came along actually pretty good for this. And I felt for the character. That's what got me a little bit emotional. But the acting wasn't convincing. I was not convinced at all. At least when it comes to the other character. But Peter Haskell as Joel, I was a lot more convinced than the other character. I feel like Peter did an actual, like, pretty decent job in this scene. Like, he wasn't too convincing, but I'll say this. If it was him and another great actor, I would say this scene is pretty convincing. I'd say if both actors were on par and the other actor was just as good as Pedro, I would say this scene is pretty convincing. Not too convincing, but it's convincing enough to add more to the immersion. Here, it's just Peter Pascal's the only one that's actually doing a great job, and the other one's just, I don't really know. That's pretty much my review of episode 1. I liked it. I love it. I don't know. I love the episode. Despite my small little negatives. The negatives kind of get worse in episode 2, but let's talk about the positives. First off, the story. The story is actually pretty good. Second off, the lines. Some lines aren't good, but some lines I actually do like. I love how it's shot. I love the color grading. I love the tone of the show. It feels like a Walking Dead kind of show in a way. And that I kind of like. I think it fits The Last of Us, and I love it. And it feels like a kind of like cop show in a way. It feels like that kind of show. And that I absolutely love. I enjoyed that. I give this episode a 7.5 out of 10. Now, episode 2 annoyed me a little bit more. My positive is that it has the same tone as the previous episode. That I still love. The story is still pretty good. I still love that. But the negatives kind of got worse. The acting wasn't nearly as good as the first episode. I mean, Pedro Pascal, he's kind of more sarcastic in this episode, not badass. He's still the hardened badass Joel, but he felt a little bit more sarcastic and not nearly as badass. But still pretty badass. He was good. Ellie is okay. This is the episode where she's like cussing way too much for me to not get annoyed by it. And then there's another character. She's alright. I guess. I prefer her sort of over Ellie. Ellie is Ellie. I like her character in the show, sort of. I mean, she's a bit annoying, but she's not like that bad of annoying. And she's a bit of a smartass. Even Joel calls her on it. And at times she can be pretty funny. She's a bit of an idiot at times. Not sure if that's character accurate, but this Ellie I do kind of like. She's just like fascinating to watch on screen because of how dumb she is, and just like how annoying she is. But at the same time, she's kind of too annoying. So she's like my least favorite character in this scene or in this episode. Tess. Oh, fuck it. I'm not gonna spoil anything. I might as well just say the third character's name. In this episode, it's Tess is with those two. And I prefer her over Ellie, but there's nothing to her, in my opinion. There's no personality, at least not much personality. I don't really get her too much. She's okay. Joel is the best part. He doesn't get as much screen time, but Joel is the best part of the show so far. I love Peter Pascal as Joel. I don't know. I love Peter Pascal as an actor. I don't know why. I just do. He's done very much media from what I've seen, but I did kind of like him in The Mandalorian, even though you didn't get to see his face very much. In this show, I love him. I love him in this show. He's fantastic in this show, at least from what I've seen. The negatives from the previous episode kind of got worse. The acting got worse. The convincingness kind of got worse. Most of the episode was kind of boring, and the one thing that was annoying me was in this episode it had much faster pacing than the first one. Like there's many moments where they could have had good character moments that only last like 30 to 40 seconds, and then like it passed. Like there's this one moment where they're all like on top of a rooftop staring out somewhere, and the way it's shot, it looks like Joel and Ellie are gonna have a good character moment. And they speak a couple of lines. They pause for like 30 seconds. And not even within the 30 seconds, Tess just walks up to the next building. She's like, come on, guys, let's go. And I was like, oh, come on. We're going to have actual character moments. That's something that annoyed me in this episode. And the other thing that annoyed me, something that's been annoying me, in the previous episode wasn't nearly as bad, but this one is kind of bad. The action scenes, like the guns and shooting the zombies and stuff, the camera work is terrible. It's absolutely, like, I do not like it. Like, you know how in the show Obi-Wan Kenobi, during the lightsaber fights, the camera's a little bit shaky? Personally, I am fine with it. But in this show, it's a lot worse. Like the last time I tried to record this review already, when I got to this part, I tried to recreate the camera shaking with my phone. But it was stuttering too much, and I accidentally left the camera mode, so now I have to re-record all this. But yeah, the camera shaking is like, I don't know. It's that fast. You couldn't even see my face when I did that. That's how I felt when watching the show. It was too distracting, and I could barely see anything. I didn't like the camera work at all. It was annoying. There were some parts where it was just alright, but most of the time it was too shaky, and I couldn't see anything that well. I didn't like this episode nearly as much as the first one. I'd say so far this is the worst episode in The Last of Us, but still pretty alright. It's decent at most. The absolute highest I'd give if I had to was a 6 out of 10. But right now it's a 5.5 out of 10. The previous episode was a 7.5 out of 10. That one's pretty good, nearly great. But this episode is just, it's just meh. Some things I absolutely love. I love that they kept the tone of the previous episode. It still feels like the Walking Dead kind of show. But this episode was a lot more boring, and it was too fast-paced. There are a lot of issues I had with it. Some things I liked, some things I didn't. Yeah, it's just a pretty meh episode. So far, based on this episode, I'd give The Last of Us about a 6 to 7 out of 10. Highest I get is 6.5 right now. I'd probably give it a 6. It's decent. Like, the first episode was pretty good, but it wasn't, like, phenomenal or great. At least it was phenomenal, at least from what I've seen in a long time of shows. But, overall, wasn't amazing. It was just good. It was pretty good. This episode is just alright. Highest I'd probably give it a 6 is a 6, but still, yeah. Right now I'd give the show about a 6.5. Somewhere around there. 6 to 6.5. So yeah. I'm going to be watching episode 3 tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So yeah, that's so far my Last of Us episodes 1 and 2 review. If you guys have enjoyed this video, please drop a like, a comment, and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. And I will see you guys tonight when I review The Last of Us episode 3. See ya.